How's it going, everybody? It's Doc Truman.
Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman, Matthew Doc Truman. Thank you for watching this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend, because I know you will. Tonight, this episode is titled, I Ran a Mile in Those Shoes. Well, I did. I served this country. Somebody once said I was the best medic in the Army. That somebody was me. Just teasing. I was a decent soldier. But anyway, we're going to do a podcast tonight. It's going to be crappy, and I'm glad you joined. First thing I'm going to bring up is this. I hope you enjoy it. Little reminder from back when my parents were children.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity.
All right. So that was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Military-industrial complex. I think we're seeing what he warned us about so long ago. And we continue to fall in these pitfalls, if you will. And every time I wrote this post, I'm going to look it up. I didn't plan to do it. But I wrote a post about freedom of speech. Because I think we lose rights as Americans every time we go to war. And we've had decent leaders in the past, and we've had decent leaders come up. And then sometimes, for whatever reason, when politicians get into politics, there's like a switch. They talk a good game. It's either they're selling us a bill of goods or they truly believe this stuff. And then when they get in, they realize we can't fulfill it because there's powers above our powers. Should there be powers above the American power? I didn't think so. At least that's not how it was told to us. So anyway, I'm going to play this video and then I'll read what I posted the other day. Do you believe in the freedom of speech? We have our Bill of Rights. The first Bill of Rights is, the last part is the freedom of speech. We have the freedom of press. Tucker Carlson's going through a little issue. Whatever you believe, you can believe. But let's talk about freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. The Founding Fathers named the first 10 amendments to the Constitution the Bill of Rights, the first of which guarantees some of the most fundamental freedoms of our country, including freedoms of press, protest, religion, assembly, and last but certainly not least, freedom of speech. The definition of free speech and its limits, such as censorship and hate speech, have been debated since the initial adoption of the First Amendment. Freedom of speech is considered a fundamental building block of liberty, allowing citizens to express their ideas and bring about the change that reflects the needs of the people. It also gives a voice to sometimes conflicting or dissenting opinions, which is believed to inspire the healthy debate that moves society forward. When drafting the First Amendment, James Madison and his colleagues drew from many of the great thinkers of the day. One of the most influential works in colonial America at the time was a collection of essays known as Cato's Letters. The writers were two British men, John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon, who wrote under the pseudonym Cato. Cato was one of Julius Caesar's chief opponents in the Roman Senate, known for his incorruptibility and defense of the Republic. They published 144 essays promoting liberty and criticizing the overreach of the English crown. In one essay, they wrote, "Freedom of speech is the great bulwark of liberty. They prosper and die together." This idea and others from the letters inspired much of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. From Madison's own notes, we know that he intended freedom of speech to be a natural right, not something granted by the government. Of course, free speech is not an unlimited right. And because the First Amendment doesn't establish what those limits are, we've spent centuries debating what is and what isn't free speech, a debate allowed by our right to free speech. The recent history of free speech can be traced through a long and winding path of landmark Supreme Court cases, so just strap in for a minute. Prior to World War I, the Supreme Court had virtually never ruled on cases on the freedom of speech and had done little to protect dissenting voices. Then, in 1919, the court decided in Schenck v. United States that the government was allowed to limit speech that would create a clear and present danger. In 1942, again in a time of war, the court limited protection for fighting words, speech that can provoke harm to another, in the case of Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire. The year after, however, in West Virginia v. Barnett, the court determined that making students recite the Pledge of Allegiance violated their free speech rights. In 1989, flag burning was ruled as protected free speech in Texas v. Johnson, as was cross burning in 2003's Virginia v. Black, unless it's being done to intimidate. So yes, free speech is certainly not a simple issue, but it's one worth debating over, as it remains the cornerstone of American democracy.
All right. So let's think about freedom of speech. Are we losing it? We shouldn't. We should never lose the freedom of speech. Without the freedom of speech, without the First and Second Amendment, America will be lost. There are politicians today that are trying to limit our freedom of speech. There are politicians today that are trying to limit our Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I'm a Second Amendment absolutist. I'm a First Amendment absolutist. You have the absolute freedom of speech and you have the absolute freedom to keep and bear arms. So I wrote this about 3 days ago and I posted it over on my personal Facebook page. Have you noticed that no matter what war we get into, we do not get more free, but less free? Let's simply start at the global war on terror. What did the government do? They passed the Patriot Act. Government grew exponentially. Currently, the U.S. is under a partial shutdown. TSA is being paid, and TSA isn't being paid, and the talking heads are making this a big deal. Look, I don't like sending people or seeing people miss paychecks at all, but the TSA is a relic of 9/11 and makes us less free. What happened during the war in 2020? You know, the war on a virus. The government forced its workforce and our military to take an experimental shot at an experimental vaccine. They shut down entire cities, businesses, and hospitals. I had friends who couldn't even sit with family as they lay in those facilities or passed away. I heard a story. It was awful. They had to sit outside while their father passed away. It was awful. Look what happened after. It just disappeared like a destructive tornado, never to be seen again. That accomplishment was the conditioning. So they conditioned us to, fear these diseases. It was all a controlling condition. Let's now jump to the current special military action in Iran. I use the Russian term because the Russians used, this is just a special military operation. It's still Russia and Ukraine, but it was just a special military operation. I use the Ukraine on purpose. Anywho, what are we seeing more and more? The attack on free speech. Our founding fathers knew without freedom of speech, we would have a tyrannical government. That's why it is the first Bill of Rights. It's first in the Bill of Rights. It's that important to our free society. The government and their proponents will use the most abhorrent examples to push out to the public. They will use things like, you hate Muslims, you hate Jews. This is done to outrage you and outrage other people. It is used to scare others and keep a divide. Obviously, criticizing a war or a foreign government isn't anti-Semitic, but there are many who will accuse you of that. We will see an increase in horrific crimes across our country. Crimes we never support or commit. Don't let our government use this as a way to take away your freedoms again. They continue to create, government creates these crises, wars, rumors of wars. They continue to create these crises in order to take more freedom. I'm convinced of that now more than ever because I supported Trump. I supported Bush. I was a Republican. I'm still a Republican. But for how long, who knows? Let's share another video. So this is Glenn Beck. Way back in the day. Glenn Beck's on a different spectrum nowadays. But this was Glenn Beck back in the day when he liked freedom.
And I don't remember what I said to my on-air partner, Pat. We were talking about it, and I said, you know what? How fast did the Patriot Act? How did they write that? How many pages was that? I never even thought, this is in the innocent days. Who wrote the Patriot Act? Because we know who wrote the Stimulus Act, and that was the Apollo Alliance. We looked it up. Does anybody here in the audience know who wrote the Patriot Act or when it was written? This will blow your mind. It was written in 1995. 1995, including the wiretapping and everything else. America, you know who wrote it? One of the biggest union guys of them all, Joe Biden.
But in a nutshell, Joe Biden in 1995 wrote this legislation, which basically is, in a nutshell, the Patriot Act. They reworded it, they rearranged some of the paragraphs, but it's pretty much almost verbatim the language that is in the Patriot Act. And so it existed some 7 years before 9/11.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution. nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." Alexander Hamilton agreed, and he stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." And John Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates.
All right. So this podcast is being done on a hurry up style. So I apologize if the production is off, but I had to do it because tomorrow night I'm going to watch the Texas Longhorns play some basketball. So I'm not going to be on tomorrow. The government can no longer contain information. They don't hold sway over information. Back in the day, they could. We have the internet now. We can research. We have our home library doesn't consist of an encyclopedia anymore. Like back in the day, all you had was your encyclopedia. You had to go to the library and look up things. Nowadays, we have information at our fingertips and our phones. And that worries government. They can only confuse information, and that's what they're trying to do. Everything that's being put out is confusion. Like, was Netanyahu dead? He's not dead. But was it an AI video? It's not an AI video. Now it is an AI video. That's what's happening today. They can only confuse you and confuse the public so you don't catch on to what their plots and their plans are. I didn't want to think about this kind of stuff, the kind of stuff we thought about after Bush and Obama and Biden and all. But does it get any better? Are you better off today with Trump? We thought we were going to be better off. My background, primary, May 5th. Hey, when I made that background, I thought we were great. Nowadays, what do we have? We have America again. We did. There's an info war, not the Alex Jones info war program, but an information war. And back then, I guess he knew. I didn't. I'm gullible. I joined up in the Army at 30 years old. I'm gullible. So now the news is talking about a lot of different things and a lot of different attacks. And they're like, it's Israel and the Gulf states versus Iran. They're trying to pit the entire Middle East against Iran. But did Israel, prior to this, did they ever attack anybody? I don't know. Let's look. Matt, you hate Jews. Not really. let me find this video and I'll play it for you.
The Israeli airstrikes in Doha, Qatar were captured by security cameras. One explosion at the back of the targeted building, followed by another in the front. Cell phone video shows people running in the normally quiet and peaceful Qatari capital. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said the targets were Hamas leaders who have an office in Qatar.
At noon today, I convened the heads of Israel's security organizations and authorized a surgical precision strike on the terrorist chiefs of Hamas. These are the same terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
He says he gave the green light for the strike after Hamas claimed responsibility for Monday's mass shooting, where gunmen opened fire on commuters at a Jerusalem bus stop, killing 6 Israelis. But the White House tonight had rare criticism of Israel and its decision to hit Hamas in Qatar, neutral ground where negotiations among enemies take place. The Hamas office was opened in Qatar over a decade ago in a deal with Washington's support to facilitate diplomacy.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal.
The White House saying the U.S. military, not Israel, notified it of Israel's operation as it was happening, and that the U.S. then told Qatar, whose government called it a cowardly Israeli attack and state terrorism. Tonight, President Trump speaking to Netanyahu and Qatar's top leaders.
He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
Richard joins us now live. Richard, what do we know about whether Israel hit those Hamas officials they were targeting?
Well, we don't exactly know, Tom. Israel says it is still assessing. Hamas says that several of its members were killed, but none of its top leaders. And Qatar says that a member of its security services was also among the dead.
So my question is this. Do you think Qatar is feeling the love from Israel? Do you think anybody in the Middle East, the Arabs, the Muslims, the whomever, is feeling the love from Israel? I don't think so. But they know the United States military is the best in the world. So they have to play ball. It's politics. This is all politics. Could it be taken care of diplomatically? Of course it could. Will it? No. Because Israel, no matter what you think, I'm not anti-Jew, I'm not anti anything really, except for governments strong-arming people and murdering children. That sucks. Anywho, let's go to, and here's another question. How do, when our American leaders get into office and they campaign on a whole bunch of stuff, or politicians in general, when they campaign on everything and they get into office and all of a sudden that changes, it switches. What is that? What is that? I don't know, because what we're seeing now is not the same thing we saw when Trump campaigned. Everything's different, but they're going to tell you, and his sycophants will tell you, oh yeah, this is Trump. We're MAGA now. Mark Levin's MAGA, he was a never Trumper. Ben Shapiro's MAGA, never Trumper. Lindsey Graham, never Trumper. Now they're out in the golf course, just, hitting the links. Let me play this. This is something about the media and our defense secretary. Like, these are all the people that when Trump announced them, was like, okay, cool. Yeah. I was all in. Yeah. I admit I was an idiot. I'm a dumb idiot. So turn off the podcast or do whatever you want. But I'm just pointing out my idiocracy. Watch the movie, by the way. Mike Judge. Great film. It shows America today, I think. All right, let's hit it.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, specifically you, the press corps, because you cheer against Trump so hard. It's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump. Because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes. You have to hope maybe they weren't effective. Maybe the way the Trump administration has represented them isn't true. So let's take half-truths, spun information, leaked information, and then spin it in every way we can to try to cause doubt and manipulate the public mind over whether or not our brave pilots were successful. How many stories have been written about how hard it is to, I don't know, fly a plane for 36 hours? Has MSNBC done that story? Has Fox? Have we done the story how hard that is? Have we done it 2 or 3 times so that American people understand? How about how difficult it is to shoot a drone from an F-15 or 16 or F-22 or F-35? Or what it's like to man a Patriot battery? Or how hard it is to refuel midair? Giving the American people an understanding of how complex and sophisticated this mission really was. There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that because of the hatred of this press corps are undermined because your people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible.
That was Pete Hegseth grilling the media, telling them, how dare you cover this with accuracy or your spin or whatever it is, because obviously media spins, but what does that mean? Because I'm going to pull up this article I found. After others departed, Pentagon announces new press corps filled with conservative news outlets. So why with the conservative news outlets filled in the Pentagon press corps is it being reported that the war isn't going so well? Why is that? Because it's not. I mean, do I want our military to be successful? Obviously. I'm an American. And I pray for them. And I pray for the 18 troops. Honestly do. I was there once. It sucks. You're put in a position. You sign up for one thing, but we do another thing. And just know when you join the military, you're at the behest of leaders who have other things on their mind. And it's a tough job. I wouldn't want to be president or Secretary of Defense or anything like that. Some people would jump at that position. I wouldn't. All right. So let's go to this next video. We're coming to a close, people. Sorry, this is not the podcast I wanted to do tonight, but it was a rushed podcast. Let's hear old Mike Huckabee. You know, the one who believes in dispensationalism.
You see why the U.S. ambassador hosting a convicted betrayer of his own country who's encouraging Americans to continue to betray their country would seem shocking.
I met Jonathan Pollard 2 times. Once I was making a speech in Jerusalem. This has been a few years ago. His wife was still alive at the time. Later, his wife passed away, and I sent him a note and just said, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. I remember meeting her at the hotel. He then asked, could he come and see me? He wanted to come and thank me for being kind to him. He came to the embassy. I think we met for maybe 30 minutes. We had a nice, pleasant visit. He was able to come to the U.S. Embassy to have a meeting at his request. I did. And frankly, I don't regret it. I met with a lot of people over the course of the time I've been here, and we'll meet with a lot more.
This was the greatest traitor in modern American history, who sold our battle plans to the Israeli government, then gave them to the Soviet Union. He gave an interview, as I know you know, in 2021 to Israeli media, in which he said, I would encourage Jewish Americans with security clearances to spy for Mossad against their own country, the United States, because all Jews should have dual loyalty. You see why the U.S. ambassador hosting a convicted betrayer of his own country who's encouraging Americans to continue.
All right. So that was Mike Huckabee talking about meeting with Tony Pollard. Who's Tony Pollard, you ask? Tony Pollard was a Jewish man who took American military secrets and delivered them to Israel to create the nuclear bomb. Is Israel under the same oversight as the rest of the world with nuclear bombs? They're not. Why does Israel get a pass? Because of the Holocaust? Are we not all equal? Apparently not. And I played that video because now the person interviewing him, Tucker Carlson, is now apparently under investigation, spied upon. What happens with that? I don't know. I don't know Tucker Carlson. I don't know what he's done. But I enjoy his podcast. He's under investigation for spying for the Iranians or the Qataris or whoever they place him with. It's wild. I'm going to end. I mean, these are things we all got to think about, guys. We're living in different times. It's not the 90s when we grew up or the 80s and peace and love, right? When 9/11 happened, we were all on board. Like we're Americans. I was on board. I proved it. 30 years old. 2 kids. I said, screw this. I'm going out. I got to do this. This right here, that's a combat medic badge. I rarely, this is like one time that I rarely point this out. That means I was in combat as a medic in Afghanistan. It happened. Big deal. Who cares? Right? That's something that I'll get to share with my children, and they'll, hey, dad was in the military and he was in Afghanistan. Great. Anyway, let's end with something funny, because I watched this podcast today and it was hilarious. So I'm going to end with this.
The Tim Dillon Show. We are here. Spring has sprung. We have the spring background. I believe that is the Tulip Festival in the Netherlands. And a beautiful statement of spring and of hope, of new life. And I'm very hopeful and I'm very positive, and I don't care how bleak it gets. I believe that things are going to get better. I like this new leader. By the way, I'm bullish on this new leader. I'm gonna have a little trouble pronouncing his name, but he's because, by the way, I was always saying Ayatollah Khomeini, but it's Khamenei or something. I just realized that. But oh boy, here we go. Mojtaba Khamenei. I'm bullish on him, and I think we won the war, and I think it's time to leave and give him this country. And a lot of people are saying, well, we're starting off on the wrong foot with him because we killed his father, his wife, and maybe his daughter, right? We kill his daughter as well. Well, maybe he didn't like his wife and his father. Here's the deal. You can't ever know the inner dynamics of any family. So, sure, I'm sure he was startled by the killing of his father, wife, and daughter. But I think on the flip side, this is a new day for him. He gets to be the leader. He can get another wife. He may have had another wife. He may have multiple wives. That's part of that thing they do. And because a lot of people have been saying, rightly so, like, hey, well, we killed this guy's father, wife, daughter, his family, and that's probably going to make him angry and like kind of like attacking his country and killing his family. He's going to even be more dedicated to getting a nuke because that would have prevented this. So there is that school of thought out there, you know, that he's actually going to be more dedicated to enriching uranium to make a nuclear weapon to prevent another attack by the U.S. and Israel. You might say that. But I think this guy might be good. I don't know why. I just have a feeling. I have a feeling about him, and I have a feeling about this whole thing. I know that we're sending more warships to the Middle East and Marines, but I still think we've won and we're done. I know it's the Pentagon's moving additional Marines and warships to the Middle East as Iran steps up its attacks on the Strait of Hormuz, according to 3 U.S. officials. I still think we've won, and I think people should communicate to Donald Trump how much we've won, how glorious this victory has been for all of us, how exciting it's been to see this, how grateful we are for this, and that we should now just go home and think about it as a great, glorious memory of the past. But I mean, the liberals will fuck it up. If he goes, I won, we're done, the Democrats will be like, you didn't win anything. You actually lost. And he'll go, you're all right, and then nuke everyone. So whatever this man needs to hear, really, whatever this guy needs to hear, he's at the end of his life. He's endorsing Jake Paul for president. He doesn't care what happens next. That's the thing with Donald Trump. He doesn't really care what happens next. So whatever this guy needs to hear to get him out of this war, tell him that. Whatever this dude needs to hear so that he can get us the fuck out of there, because this is, and listen, obviously we all support the U.S. military.
Amen.
That's why we don't want them dying for literally no reason in Iran, unfortunately. Now, I know people will attack me for saying that. They will say, well, you're dishonoring their sacrifice. What I'm saying is that if we get a crazier leader than the one we had before, I don't get it. But Trump is just kind of on a farewell tour. And take a look here. He's endorsing Jake Paul for political office. And you really have to think to yourself, we do deserve everything we get as a country. You know, like we really do deserve it. There's certain things that people get in their lives they don't deserve. You know, somebody gets sick or whatever. You get in a bad car accident. But, you know, this country deserves everything we get. Everything we get, we really deserve. I don't know how much of it anymore can be blamed on outside forces, you know, or even these billionaires that are, we know, evil and bad, a lot of them. But the common person here also is unfortunately really sadly culpable in a lot of this. You know, the people that are cheering on this war in Iran have no fucking clue why we're there. They don't care. They're happy to just see violence. You know, they're happy to see things blow up. They're at a bar in Florida. They're excited about the Ayatollah getting whacked. They don't know why. They don't know what Iran did to them. They're just happy to see violence and chaos. And those are the people who are culpable for what this what this country is going to get. Make no mistake, we're going to get it. What this country is getting, those are the people who deserve it. Those are the people who deserve it. When the gas spikes and we're no longer in the Middle East because we were thrown out of the Middle East because Iran attacked all of our bases, we didn't defend them, and a lot of these Gulf states don't want much to do with us. When all of that happens, and when Israel's the regional power there and becoming a global power, again, this is out of Netanyahu's mouth, when all of that happens, the people that cheered this on from their backyard in Long Island without a goddamn thought as to why we were doing it, it just felt good to them. It was a way to own the libs by sending troops into a Middle Eastern country. These people are all hopped up on pharmaceuticals and French vanilla coffee creamer, and they have a bloodlust that is insatiable. The suburban American has a bloodlust that is absolutely insatiable. Nothing is enough for these people. Nothing is enough. We're becoming a sexless country. We're a joyless country. Our only joy is in exporting violence and sitting back and watching it. It is the only thing that unites people and gets them excited. They all have a bloodlust, and they want things to blow up, and they want people to get hurt, and they don't care that we bombed a school of Iranian children. They don't care that a Tomahawk missile ripped through a school and killed 165 people, many of them between the ages of 8 and 10 years old. They don't care because many parts of this country are a moral black hole. They are a moral black hole where there is no morality. They're amoral. You say, well, maybe they have bad morals. No. They have no morals. They're a black hole. Those are the people that are cheering on what's happening right now in Iran. They cheered on what happened in Iraq. Okay, 20 years after that, everyone in this country has less money on average. People do not own homes. People still don't have health care. People are in no better position financially than they were, except the top tier. And those are the same people that cheered that on. They're cheering this on. And here's the president now endorsing who I believe and I called this years ago. I said, Logan Paul, but it'll be Jake. But I imagine that is what will come next. That is the inevitable next move here is this.
Got us. Trump's got us. God bless. Love you, Kentucky.
Meet EM Sense.
All right. Stopping it at the commercial. Go watch that the latest Tim Dillon podcast. He's a gay dude. So but he's a cool gay dude. Yeah. Anyway. So I'm going to do the Tim Dillon as I roll out. Throw my shades on or the Whalen Red Rooster. Put my Doors hat on and I'm out. Pray for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force. Pray for all of them because they're going to need it. And they didn't know. It's not their fault. They're following their orders. But I don't know. That's what I did. That's what I say. Anywho. Peace. Love you.